moving on to our panel. And it's a big panel, so I'll just read out the names. And you please join me on stage. I'd like to welcome back the CEO of the Silicon ALPS Cluster, Robert Querer. We have Bernhard here already. And of the Ministry of Magic, Michael Wiesmüller back again. Of the Institute of Electronic Sensors and Systems, Alexander Bergmann, there he is. Of AT&S, Matthias Pirs. And of the Chair of Bio-Inspired Circuits and Systems, of the University of Groningen, here's Elisabetta Chicca. There you are. Hello and welcome on stage. So, now, good to have you all on stage. And now, without any further ado, let's jump into the panel. Don't forget, you can also join us via Slido. However, Robert, I'd like to start with you over there. And research, industry, are they a dream team? What's your thoughts on that?
Hello? Yeah. Yes, of course they are a dream team. There are probably some things that have some ingredients that have to be added. So it's not just about, how to say, two sides coming together. Sometimes both sides are speaking two different languages. So maybe one ingredient can be brought by a cluster acting as a translator between Chinese and English or something else.
I like that. That's probably what we'll require. And I also like that you said, well, the translator is a challenge. But let's find out. But we're going to take a step back first, and as we have a lot of people on stage and very little time for this, and our topic was curiosity, as an opener, I'd be very keen on hearing, how does curiosity influence your everyday life, and specifically from a professional point of view? Now, you have a lot to say, but please try and keep it under 3 minutes, please. Should we just start with you?
Sure.
Yes.
Happy to. So my everyday life, I think a lot of startups come to me and pitch ideas and try to convince me of things, and not many of them are open enough to brainstorm with me and be really open about going in a discussion with a completely different outcome, because there's a lot of ingredients that you need to make curiosity really be successful in the end. And I think many of the times it doesn't really fit, because not all ingredients are in discussion. So I'm always open for exploring my own curiosity and helping startups to go and think in different directions.
Thank you. Michael.
Just reflecting what I should say. Well, in my professional domain, I would answer. Curiosity is something which would support an idea like we had, or colleagues had 20 years ago with Easter. What about? I mean, curiosity is something which tries to be at the frontier and wants to know what is behind the frontier. And Easter, as we had the keynote here, was this kind of thing behind the curtain, behind the frontier. And it was incredibly successful. It's really very impressive to see what we have achieved at that day. I think it's about, curiosity is about being creative in politics in the wider sense, or being creative in the way you're organizing your national research system, whatsoever, what you're ever doing. It's, being curious about what will happen if we spend, and you've seen the figures, 2 billion in 2026, what is the output of this? Okay.
Thank you.
So curiosity is a strong drive in my life. It drove my geographic journey from Italy to Switzerland to Germany and now in the Netherlands. And it's it's the drive behind fundamental research. So I'm a professor at the University of Groningen, and my aim in doing research is to understand how the brain works by constructing technical systems. So the question about how is curiosity in my daily life, it's an easy question to answer, because my job is really about trying to understand things. And if I wasn't curious, I wouldn't be here today telling you about my job. But in this event, there is a lot about bringing curiosity into technology. And that's something that is relatively new for me, or I would say even unexplored. And so that's what drove my curiosity in coming here today. And I've been learning a lot about this. And it's something I'm looking forward to figure out how fundamental research can drive the development of new product. We have heard an amazing talk about that today, just the previous keynote, and I didn't know about ISTA, and you made me want to join you. It sounds like a wonderful place where curiosity is really taken seriously.
Thank you.
So let me start by quoting Yuval Noah Harari. It's an author I really like to read, and he once said, "The greatest scientific discovery was a discovery of ignorance, and once humans realized how little they knew about the world, they suddenly had a very good reason to seek knowledge." And to be honest, this really resembles also my daily work. I'm working in an international company, leading manufacturer of IC substrates and printed circuit boards in the high-end area, and we work together with 60+ nationalities. It's fascinating to see how also we as a company can participate at current trends like AI. Also Harari writes a lot about that, and how we can also start shape technology like this from Austria, from projects we are currently building in Hinterberg. And this fascinates me daily to see how bright minds get together, work in the R&D, bring it to commercialization and industrialization in the end on the market. This is more or less my thinking when I think about curiosity.
Thank you.
Great, already a lot said about curiosity, but I'm curious what curiosity is. So that's the curiosity of a scientist, looking also about this expression. What does it really mean? What is behind that? Is it a trigger of motivation? Is it the main trigger of motivation? Is it the crux of motivation? Does it help us to develop science in a way it should develop? Or what is behind this word? So I think making it always that short and just reducing it to a word is most of the times too simple in my experience. And of course, curiosity helps especially small kids to try to discover stuff and things and stuff like that, and that still works at university. So if you have PhD students and if you don't more or less light fire on their curiosity, not a lot will come out. So that's more or less what I think what is curiosity about.
I love the excitement over there as well. It translates well. And just, I'm curious because I see there's already a lot of Slido questions, and I'm going to get to them in 1 minute. Just you quoted Harari, and all of you talked about curiosity. And for me, innovation and technology is also very much about timing. And Harari said, in his opinion, for the first time in history, in mankind, we have no idea what's going to happen in 10 to 20 years. So I'm curious what because for me that means that it's not an option to be curious, but it's a necessity to be curious. What's your thoughts on that? That was a deep question, wasn't it? Whoever wants to jump in, I'm just curious on your thoughts there, because what I'm trying to say is 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was certain paths that were very trodden, and it was clear to go this way and that way. But now we're all like, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the world. We don't know what's going to happen with AI, blah, blah, blah. So I have the feeling that curiosity is an even more important driver, and specifically also coming from both sides of the market. You brought up Harari, so it's yours.
Yeah, maybe just a few words. I really think it's important to somehow act with strategic foresight. Until 2050, we really don't know what is happening in the future. We can see only some developments happening already where we are going to, and we really have to pick up the current trends. And I think We have a lot of good technology leaders here, also in Austria, but also in Europe. The question is really, how can we understand those trends? Like, for example, the big data volume growth we all experience in the next few years already tripling towards the zettabyte range. We really must understand and stay hungry to understand the trend and how can we benefit from that in order also to help, for example, like with the triple transition. I really think it's not an option to not stay curious at current times.
Not at all. Now, I said I wanted to switch to Slido quite quickly. And interestingly, the most pressing question from the audience, it's in German, so I'm going to read it in German, and then I'll translate it to English. And again, it's not my question, it's just the most popular one. So, wie können wir unsere Industrie- und Forschungsszene weniger konservativ machen? How can we turn our industry and research scene less conservative? And you were already stretching,
That's my question here.
Is it?
I've been working in industry, I've been a scientist in industry, and I was...
Just interrupt you. Just from body language, it's incredible what just happened in this whole panel. Everyone was like, yes, bring it. So whoever had that question, that's awesome. Go for it.
Yeah. So I had the impression like there were so many ideas in the setting that I was. So industry is not lacking ideas, not at all. People have a lot of ideas, and mostly they are great ideas. I think where really the bottleneck is in the sense of leadership, that we have these people, the management culture that we have that is based on small predictable advances that are not a risk in terms of any career of everyone. And this is what I've seen in the industry setting all the time. So people are not getting rewarded for taking risk, they're punished for failures. And this is just a question of what kind of people we are picking for leadership, and also what kind of management education we want to give people in the future. For me, it's clear this can't go that way forever. So we have to rethink, and I don't have a fast cure for it, to be honest.
You seem nervous on your seat. You're moving forwards and backwards. You were going to, yes.
I was thinking about the equivalent in research and about funding for research. I think also there, but I also don't have the answer, so I'm afraid. I think also there something has to change in terms of how the research that is getting funded by the funding agency is chosen. We were discussing even before this panel that it's a lottery ticket. But who knows if this lottery ticket is really focusing on non-conservative ideas, and maybe just trying to go in that direction also with the funding could be something that then can later translate into new technologies that are more innovative.
If someone wants to jump in, great. If not, there's a ton of questions. Go on, Michael.
Yeah, let me comment shortly on this. I mean, in general term, the punchline would be that this is true. We have a risk problem a little bit in Austria, in Europe, a little bit in Austria. But I would, industry and research, I wouldn't mix these too much together. I would say, well, industry in some way, industry has a traditional role to be reluctant a little bit with respect to their markets and to their revenue. With respect to the research scene, I would say we need more of those examples that we have seen. We have seen Bionet, we have seen TTTech, we have seen other companies coming out of excellent scientific research. And I mean, TTTech, for example, when I started at the ministry, there were 8 people. They are now 2,500. They have contracts with NASA, and I mean, with world-leading companies, this is really... So if I'm going to somebody in the company saying, do you know the story of TTTech? Nobody will know. So we should pick up more of those really strong success stories that we have in Europe. We've seen this Nordic company developing this medicine, incredibly successful medicine this morning. So we have those stories. which have, and the story of TT Tech is, of course, a story of risk, of failure, of desperation, of really, well, economic wars against competitors and so on. But, well, they exist, they're created value, and we need to put them more in front.
Just the funny thing is, so if we go back to the initial question that I asked Robert as an opening statement, are research and industry a dream team? I mean, obviously they are. Full stop. We don't need to discuss on that. And you, Michael, just brought up that great example of TT Tech. And the funny thing is, as you said, it's an incredible global player which so is derived from the TU Vienna, right? A small team, and now they're a huge global player. They're on the ISS and in nearly every aeroplane. I think they collaborate with Audi. Every electronic part in Audi is TT Tech, at least on the screens. Yet most people, probably outside of this room, have never heard of them. So we could also probably establish that, number one, yes, they are a dream team, but no one knows of that dream team. And my leading question upon that would be, as most people are not aware of these kind of dream teams and these collaborations, and same thing is of spinning out of universities and the impact that can be created further than papers from that, is maybe one of the main challenges we're looking at, quite simply, a lack of storytelling in this, a lack of telling individual success stories, and by that highlighting paths that can be taken? It's not, no, you just don't all nod, take a microphone and say something.
I would say I totally agree. And
Good.
right now, for example, research, development, innovation, we really have to make sure that we communicate what are our successes, what is it capable, and we have to aim for technology acceptance in the end. For example, also in the AI field, I mean, we have hardly any leading players in Europe. We have to push forward how we can make this technology accepted in various institutions. It's not only in the industry, it might be also in the RTOs, also in the ministries, and everywhere we have to learn how to work with this technology, make it accepted, and try to push forward further innovation. And I think, this is really also a task for leadership to ensure the awareness and also ensure the diversity in terms of how can we not be too much conservative, as the first question was framed.
And the interesting thing is, like, conservative is a question how we translate it. And I might like to translate it now in being risk averse. I think this is maybe the best way of putting it, right? Because conservative could be down to many, many, many factors, but at the end of the day, I think we're talking about being risk averse and so on. I'd like to add the second most pressing question to Slido, because at the end of the day, you're the experts here. Don't know to whom that is. It seems that Exista is mainly working with US companies. Is this a sustainable investment of Austrian research?
Well, glad that I can clarify that.
I bet you are.
So first, I mean, on the slide of the seven companies that we built out of the Institute, 2 of them are in the US, and it's because we added to the technology of these companies, but the main drivers of these companies are in the US, and it's totally fine. So ISTA is holding shares of these companies. Whenever these companies are getting sold, whenever we're having an exit, this money is going back to ISTA, fueling Austrian research. The rest is in Austria. Will most probably stay in Austria. Maybe if they're getting too big and there is not enough funding left in a Series C, D stage, they might go to the US still. Our institute holds share. And then whatever I said about the other companies that we are investing in Sweden, in France, in Slovenia, this is private money. This is not Austrian public money. I mean, there's a little bit of Austrian public money, but we are a fund. Every one of you can invest in this fund, by the way, and we are fundraising right now as we are doing. So this is return driven. This is not a grant. This is money that we will increase this pile of money, like every other investment fund is as well. So that's a purely economic kind of thing and vehicle.
Now, I have the privilege of lecturing at a couple of universities, and including TU Vienna. And what we see there is there's a strong initiative in creating more and more spin-outs, also at the Medical University of Vienna. More and more spin-outs and trying to tell researchers, look, you're brilliant, but to really get your brilliance out there, please start companies. And it seems to be, on top of that, and that's just my personal opinion, that there's additionally a kind of mindset that says, yes, but first of all, I don't want to start a company, because that's not quite good. And on top, earning a ton of money is a very bad thing. And that's sometimes a mindset I encounter. By that I mean creating a profitable or for-profit company, a global player, seems to be something that's considered slightly negative. So it's a bit of a mindset challenge. And I'm curious, Elisabetta, looking at you, and no pressure on you there, and the University of Groningen, when you listen to some of this, what we've heard so far, some of the challenges we've seen, what's your outside view on what you've heard so far and some of the challenges you may have overcome in the last couple of years?
So I go back to the keynote because there was a lot of inspiration there, and we crazy scientists, we are very busy. And so the first reaction that we have when we get this pressure, because we get it all the time now, is, how do I find the time to also take care of that? And this is a big problem, so places in which this is supported and there is an infrastructure, and I think by now most universities understand that, and they're all building up a system for supporting this. I think that the most common thing that happens in research group is that a brilliant postdoc or PhD student takes the lead in creating the company, and the professor is then supporting that. But it's more rare, I don't know if I'm correct, that the professor themselves, they jump on it. And yeah, but the pressure is there, and I sense it more and more.
Is the pressure good or bad?
Both.
Oh, good.
Both, yeah, because I think the pressure comes also from the funding agencies. They are cutting more and more fundamental research. And I think that's a bad choice. I think that's not gonna, we need to feed application with the discoveries we make in fundamental research. So in that sense, it's bad. But I think it's good because at the same time, that's the way to to bring ideas into the applied research.
And to take this a step further, if we look at the next question from a certain anonymous, in Europe, we need to bring R&D results quicker to market. How can we ensure this, and what is needed to foster technology transfer? Because, again, overarching topic, research and industry is dream team. But that means in order to have research come to the industry, we have to get it out there. And this seems to be one of the most pressing challenges, because throughout today we've heard, we've got all the know-how, we've got all the smart brains, we've got all the technologies, yet it's not there. So is this one of the key challenges? And if so, how do we foster this technology transfer? You're not sure yet, are you? Okay, you're handing it forward. Okay, please.
Whew, it's a hard question. If I would have an answer to that, I would not sit here now, honestly speaking. But I think one of the things which are really needed is that in the end of some kind of research projects, you have a better overlap with industry or with companies which help to take over the results of the research. Because very often, especially at universities, you have a PhD student, he or she is brilliant, gives good results, and then after the PhD thesis, the stuff is somehow buried in a thesis or in an ERC grant or whatever, which doesn't help us to make money out of that. And if you have a good then overlap with a company or with a startup, that would be the best, then I think that would help enormously in order to be quicker, to gain this knowledge or to also make profit of this knowledge and go forward in that direction.
I'd be very curious, whose responsibility is that? To create that overlap? Because it's a brilliant approach, just like whose job is that?
I think it's the job of those who would like to make the money out of that.
And that's probably who?
And that's probably not the academic side, maybe an entrepreneur as a startup at the university, but most probably also industry. And since we have quite strong industry in Austria, I think also industry should be in that role to take this over a bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. Whoever wants to join, I'm enjoying this. Just
if I might join speaking, so for the industry, I think what is essential is really R&D and production has to go hand in hand. And right now we see really a lack of framework conditions here. which not only affects maybe the R&D activities to a certain extent in terms of costs, for example, but especially also in the production area. And we already can see that, I mean, Austria, for example, is quite good in innovation, I would say, within Europe. But if you have the bigger picture, Europe lacks the economic strengthness, so to say. We're losing grounds against the big competitors in the US. And the question for me is really, how do we get leading edge technologies to Europe, and how do we create the demand respectively when we do our R&D activities and bring it further to industrialization? How do we generate the demand for these high-end technologies, which we all use, like AI, also here in Europe? And I'm also speaking here specifically about the hardware side of the technologies.
And the funny thing is, it's a good way of kind of overlapping it to the next comment to a certain degree, where someone says, Europe is good in R&D, but we need to focus in order to create areas of specialization. Do not try to do everything, keep focus. And how can we achieve that? Someone's doing my job. The last part, I'm saying that. How can we achieve this? How can we achieve this?
Well,
Thank you.
Parts of it is already done, at least at the later stages, with the ERC grants for startups. So we were thinking about how is the US doing that with their DARPA programs, and one of the real big differences is that they have very strong, knowledgeable people in certain fields who are able to pull things together and connect the dots overall. And this has not been true up to now in the past. It's more like, everyone please come, we do panel sessions with some people sitting in these panels and making arbitrary decisions, to be fair, at least it seemed to me like that. So I think there are structural changes behind the scenes that are introduced, at least at the later stage. I don't know if this is really in the early stage, in the pathfinders, in the transitions phase as well. But I think I'm hopeful, at least, that these structural funding changes will lead to
And I just observed Michael nodding away when you said you're going like, yes.
Yeah, I'm nodding all the time.
Okay, then.
Because I agree with nearly everything said. Just to add on what the American model with DARPA, one element which is, and this might be also relevant for this question we are dealing now, is the role of procurement. So because DARPA is a defense agency, or partly a defense agency, and this is an incredible incentive if you are running for a robots challenge, which is incredibly ambitious, and you have a perspective that in 5 years, Lockheed or someone will really will make a procurement and buy your machines. This is a completely different issue, and I think this very fueling for the startup scene in US. With the question of specialization, well, that's a little bit, yeah, that's true, definitely, that Europe has problems to enforce its own strengths. And we have strengths, no doubt about it. We have strengths in various areas. I don't know, I have the impression that politics, European politics, have changed years over years. It's about, sometimes it's about coherence. It's about helping that nobody lags behind. It's about finding common European interests in specific areas. And then we have areas, and I think we are in the area right now with our endeavor to focus more on highly competitive areas like chips, like, I mean, discussions on AI seems to be trying to find out where can we really win the race or be in the race with our competitors. Yeah, I mean, this is I would say a fundamental question. How can we keep focus? How can we distribute our eggs in the right baskets? And yeah, year after year this changes a little bit, so it's hard to really give a good answer on this one.
Thank you. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, maybe just to add, also, Mr. Wiesmüller. I mean, I think just lately it was mentioned in the Draghi report. I think what could also help is we should really think European, and in certain technology areas, I can only speak for the microelectronics industry. It was also advised, focus on a clear European strategy, find out where are the strengths, but also the potentials where we have to maybe further get more money into it, actually, to be more risk averse or risk taking. Sorry, to aim for innovation. I think this strategic approach I really miss on the European level, and then of course it goes down, and we see right now really a fragmented approach in the European Union. And we should do all our best, all stakeholders here on the table, ministry, industry, but also RTOs, I would say, to really focus on a European approach when doing certain initiatives.
Robert, when we started off this panel, I asked you, are research and industry a dream team? Now, listening in, I think we've quite quickly established that. But my question is it enough to have a dream team? Or do we maybe need more than that?
Yeah, we heard a lot. It needs focus, it needs investment, it needs money, it needs the wish to achieve something. But today in the morning, we heard something in the second keynote. I think in that, when thinking of, how to say, when do we see in our network research and industry acting as dream teams, then there is always one thing they have in common. It's in the morning it was called the common North Star. So they have their common goal. So if the goal is clear, then, how to say, all the forces that are put together, all the money that is put together, all the focus that is put on that project leads to success. And I think that's, how to say, that concludes also from the morning. So we have to have in each of our activities our committed North Star.
I very much like that approach, because the funny thing is, I'm going to try and summarize what we heard so far on top of what you said. We said, okay, we set out to find out if we need a research, if research and industry are a dream team. And we quickly understood, okay, how important curiosity is a driver, but also understand that we need some kind of a reward for risk, and found out very quickly that very often the decision making is, however, somewhat conservative and risk averse. But what we're looking for has already been done, but we're not very good at communicating that. We have strong collaboration between the two in form of people like TT Tech, for example. We spoke about leadership challenges, and that we need to create a strong overlap between research and industry. If the overlap is clearer, it can be quicker and more easily executed. We talked about procurement and DARPA, and that sometimes big agencies like that, like defense agencies, can create exactly that. And you, Robert, just mentioned the North Star, the importance of that. And I believe all the acting and all the doing is absolutely pointless if we don't know where we're going. And for me, it sounds quite clear that we need something like the great JFK once called it the moonshot, something where we say, this is where we want to go, and this is why we do it. And the interesting thing is, I'm a huge JFK fan. In his speech, he said something quite interesting. He said, we chose to go to the moon and do the other things. That's the boring part. But the interesting part is, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And I kind of quite like that if we talk about these challenges we have coming up right now. And for me, it all comes down to the next step would be actually to create this very common goal that we can easily communicate. No pressure, that's not my job, that's your job, because the funny thing is, once you have that North Star, everything else follows. When we say we want to go to the moon until the end of this decade, we understand it's hard, and this is why we need to do it, because the Russians were there before us, because that's why we're scared. Then it's clear that every other action follows this one clear target. And everyone understands, do we go the easy way or the hard way? Easy way takes 20 years, okay, we only have 10, okay, we'll go the hard way. Why are we doing this? Because of that. And at the end of the day, everything else follows. The beauty is, that makes it sound super easy. The good thing is, that's why so many smart people like you are all in a room together, discussing and talking. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for all the questions on this. Thank you very much to the panel. And now I'd like, Robert, you'll stay with me, right? I'd like you, if you enjoyed this panel discussion, give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you.